Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'd like to do a review of this 6x4 Keter Darwin shed, a plastic composite shed which I've had in my garden now for about a year and a half, so I can really give my opinion now on whether it's good or not. So if you're interested to see how I put this shed together, I made a video on how I put it together from a flat pack when it arrived in the post, and I'll leave a link to that video down below in the description box if you're interested to see that. Okay, so starting off with the outside of the shed, I bought this shed and assembled it in April 21, so it's now August 22, so that's getting on for a year and a half now. I'm going to start off with the colour. So I think it may have discoloured ever so slightly. I think it was a little bit darker when I bought it, but that's debatable. It's not very noticeable, but the colour may have faded very slightly, but nothing to be concerned about. The door is all fine. I put it on a base of slabs, so it helps that it's on a really level base, so there's been no movement at all in the shed. As you can see, the door opens nicely. So I've been using this shed for the last 18 months for storage. So I've got a lot of stuff stored in here. I made a shelving rack that you can see at the back here, custom purposely for this shed. So if you'd like to see a video on how I made that, I'll leave a link in the description box below to that video. It's just to fit perfectly into this shed, the Keter Darwin 6x4. So I've got stuff kind of stacked up to the roof. So let's talk about water getting in. So in the last almost a year and a half, not a drop of water has got into this shed. So I'm pleased about that. There's no mould, there's no damp, nothing like that. There's almost no spiders. There's only very tiny little, you can see one there, little spider webs. All good. There's a vent at the top, you can just see there, that's letting air flow. So it's been through quite a damp winter with no problems at all, and I've got a lot of stuff stored in here, so it's absolutely fine. It's held together nicely. I installed a little stick-on light here just in case I'm coming in at night time if I want to look around. So on the inside everything has been good. No mould, no damp, no problems, no wet, and very limited insects getting in too. So there's air vents at the front and there's one at the back, and they work really well to make sure that your stuff inside the shed doesn't get mouldy or damp. One thing you might notice with the door alignment is that when you put it on a base, if it's a new base, the base might settle a bit and it might move slightly. So originally you might find that the door shuts perfectly, and then later on, which has happened with this one, because I put the slabs down and then I put this straight on top, you've got a bit of an alignment issue in the corner here where one side has shifted slightly, just causing a little bit of friction there. But saying that, the door, it still opens okay. There's no rot on the door, no damage at all. It's still rigid, so it's not really a problem at all. So the mechanism that locks and opens the door, there's two holes here to put a padlock through, and you lift this mechanism up and you can see that's working a treat, and there's no rot on that either. Even the parts where the paint's wearing off, there's no rot, so they're doing a good job with whatever metal they're using and coating to stop it rusting. Take a look at the hinges. These are the door hinges, and again there is no rust at all. I don't know what kind of paint it is, maybe they're powder coated, I don't know, but they don't seem to rust. Really I should have probably given these a spray of oil, but then again they're not squeaking when I open the door and there's no problems. Same with the bottom one. Some cobwebs, that's it, it's like new. So taking a look at the floor, you can see here the sort of threshold, that's all fine. There's some spiders webs down here and bits. I could clean that out. To be honest, I haven't done any cleaning on this shed since I put it up. I lined it with some old kitchen liner. Just to protect the floor, so I've put that down to protect the floor so there's no damage. So you might want to do that if you have this shed. So taking a look at the roof, as you can see, the roof is doing just fine. There's no noticeable dips or warping or breakages or anything like that. Nothing apart from sort of spiders' webs forming. It's perfectly fine. And I think this shed is paintable as well if you ever wanted to paint it. I did mention a minute ago about it may have discoloured, but it might not have. It's just that the current model looks a slightly different shade of brown to mine. But absolutely, it's not a problem at all. There's nothing wrong with the colour. So you can see again there's some cobwebs here. I frosted the window just so that you couldn't see what was inside. And the window's fine. It doesn't let any water in. Down along the bottom here, again, no problems really, just bits collecting around the edge. Very easy to clean this shed. You could give it a quick jet washing or get a broom on it and just wipe it down. Going around the back, same story again. Everything is absolutely fine. So it's pretty much how I bought it after a year and a half. And you can imagine with a wooden shed there's going to be some deterioration of the wood, some splitting, cracking, some rot even, but because this is a plastic shed, there's nothing wrong with it at all. If I give this a quick wipe down with a sponge, it'd look like new, I'm sure. Even down here on the floor you can see, I mean, water has been splashing back up here. There's a little bit of green there forming, but again that would come off with just a scrub with a brush. But I was going to mention the screws. Even the screws haven't got any rot. They're black, coated in a paint, and there's no deterioration on the screws either. And in England it does rain quite a lot, so that's pretty impressive, I think. Quite a few questions on the original video when I put this together. How did you get the screws in down the bottom on this side with it being so close to the fence? So what I did was, when I installed the screws, I just shifted the shed a foot or two this way and then pushed it back again, just one corner at a time, if you're wondering. And I've had a few questions on how do you paint your fence when it's so close to the shed. Well, there is a gap, you can see here, so there's enough space for me to get a roller down here and just paint that bit of the fence. This is a fence made out of pallet wood, which cost me practically nothing to make, and I've got a video on that. If you're interested to see that video, I'll leave a link in the description box below to that video. So some people have asked about how sturdy this shed is and if I've had any problems with it in the wind, blowing around, getting damaged. But I'll just show you now how kind of sturdy it is when it's anchored to the base. You can see I'm pushing it, it doesn't move at all. Just for low maintenance, what I've done down the side of the shed, because you might want to put it up against or close to a fence, I've just added some gravel. So there's good drainage, so the water doesn't wick up or splash up the shed. It probably wouldn't matter if it did because it's plastic, but I don't need to do anything down here. There's no plants to cut. It's all nice and low maintenance. So one small criticism that I might have with this shed is the window that you get provided originally. It's a little bit thin, so you can see here, look, if just one finger, you can see it flex. The rest of the shed's quite rigid. I don't know why they didn't just add a slightly thicker piece of plastic. I think a slightly thicker piece would just give you a bit more peace of mind for security, because this gives a bit, but it's not a problem really. I haven't had a problem with it myself, and I suppose I could upgrade this and cut my own piece of thick perspex and put it in, so it's not really a problem at all. So for my final thoughts about this shed, would I recommend it if you're looking at a small 6x4 shed to store your garden tools in, things like that? You've got a small garden. Yes, I would recommend it. In the last year and a half, it's given me no problems at all. It really helps if you put it on a level base. I can't stress that enough. It helps when you're putting it together and with prolonging the life of the shed too. So if you've got a nice level base to work with, you should be just fine. None of the screws have got any signs of rot yet. There's no signs of deterioration really at all on the shed or warping. It's working just as it was when I bought it. So in that respect, it's good. They do cost a little bit more than the equivalent wooden shed, although I would argue that they last a lot longer. So it's a false economy if you think that you can buy a cheap wooden shed and get away with it in the long run. You're probably not going to get away with it. Another thing that you save money on with this shed is you don't have to stain it. You don't have to put treatment on it every year like you would if you had a wooden shed. So that's another good thing. Another good thing is that you can put it together in literally one day. Comes in a flat pack and it's up, and then you don't have to worry about it. So I would buy another one. I'm pleasantly surprised with the performance of it. There are some people out there that don't like plastic sheds. There are a few downsides. For example, you can't really screw shelving to the insides. You kind of can, but it's not as easy as it would be if it was a wooden shed. But what I've done with that problem is I've made, as you saw earlier, a freestanding wooden rack, so it's not a problem really. So would I recommend this shed? Yeah, I would recommend it. Honestly, I would. Yeah, I paid for this shed with my own money, and I think it's a great shed. There's a bigger size of this as well now. There's a 6x8 model, which looks quite nice, and it's got a skylight in the roof. So I've had a good experience with it. I've anchored it to the base. I've got a video on how I did that. If you're interested in seeing how I anchored it to the base, I'll leave that in the description box below. All in all, it's a good shed, and I think it's worth the money. I've had a year and a half of no problems at all. So in another year and a half, it may even be the same. No problem with wind blowing it over. It's been rock solid. It's anchored nicely to the base. There's anchor points in the base. And that's about it really. So yeah, I would recommend it. So that's about it for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you're looking at buying a shed, I've given my honest opinion. Over the last 18 months, I can really see whether or not the shed performs. So if you found this video useful, please remember to like and also consider subscribing for more DIY related videos. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.